At my cousin's engagement party, my relatives joked about my fictional boyfriend. So I made a brief toast but waited until he walked in saying, "Sorry for being late. Had to land the chopper. We just got back from Abu Dhabi." I'm 34, female, from a traditional Pakistani American household in Southern California. My childhood was steeped in expectations. Attend university, preferably UCLA or USC, become a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, get married young, have 2 kids, and live within driving distance of your parents so they can watch the children on weekends and check your kitchen organization. I broke away from that plan at around 21 when I decided to study design instead of medicine. That was the first strike. The second strike happened when I quit graduate school after securing a position with an international marketing company in Munich. My parents, Samir and Layla, weren't happy about it. To them, freelancing meant unemployed, and remote work sounded like wasting time on your computer all day. Whenever we talked, I felt I needed to defend my choices. But the biggest strike was telling them I was engaged, but that they couldn't meet him yet. They'd always been doubtful about my romantic life. I dated people outside our community, and I didn't rush to introduce anyone unless the relationship was serious. When I met Kareem, a pilot and aviation consultant working between Norway and Dubai, I waited nearly a year before even mentioning him to my family. When I finally did, my mother immediately asked, "Why haven't we met him? Are you sure he's real?" It would have been amusing if she hadn't actually thought I was making it up. Jump ahead to December last year. My cousin Sonia, 29, was getting engaged. Her fiancé, Rajan, was an Ivy League-trained heart surgeon who met all the perfect Pakistani son-in-law criteria. The engagement celebration was held at a huge reception hall in San Diego with everything included. A 3-day event with buffet meals, dance performances, henna stations, and even a traditional music performance at brunch. I wasn't shocked to receive the invitation, just surprised when it contained a sarcastic note from my mother. "Hope your fiancé can make it this time." Yes, Kareem and I had already planned to be in the States for a few weeks during that time. He had business meetings in San Diego, and we were visiting some of my friends down in San Diego. We arrived at the airport from Abu Dhabi 2 days before the party. He had to attend an urgent meeting the afternoon of the engagement, but promised he'd join me there by dinner time. The thing is, we were traveling by helicopter since he was using a friend's aircraft for transportation. Something that sounds excessive but was actually more convenient than dealing with Southern California traffic and back-to-back appointments. I arrived at the venue alone. From the moment I stepped in, it began. The whispers, the forced smiles, the questions I've grown accustomed to from extended family. "Where's your fiancé?" "Still in, what is it, Dubai?" "Have you considered freezing your eggs?" "We're just concerned, Lisa. You're such a free spirit." I kept quiet, smiled, took pictures with Sonia, tried to focus on being a supportive cousin. But then I overheard my mother standing at a cocktail table near the bar, laughing with her sister, Sonia's mom, and a few aunts. "I've stopped asking," she said. "She says he works in aviation." I said, "What does that even mean? Is he a flight attendant?" "She never shows photos." I told Samir, "Maybe he's imaginary." They all laughed, not quiet giggles, but loud, open-mouthed, "Can you believe this girl?" Laughs. I was holding a glass of sparkling water, trying to keep my hands steady. I should have walked away. Instead, I stood there, taking it all in. There was nothing left to say to them, but I knew what was coming. When the toast began after dinner, I was asked to say a few words. I think the coordinator just assumed, as everyone else had, Sonia's friends, Rajan's cousins, even Omar, my younger brother, who I hadn't talked to in months, said something about finding your soulmate. Everyone looked at me as I took the microphone. I was wearing a burgundy silk sari, hair up, gold jewelry, subtle but elegant. I stood there looking at a room full of faces that had never believed in me. I hadn't prepared anything. "I'll be brief," I said. "I just want to say it's wonderful seeing 2 people who are supported, celebrated, and believed in. Not everyone gets that. So if you do, treasure it." There was polite applause, and then it happened. A loud, mechanical sound, at first distant, then unmistakable. It was the sound of helicopter blades. People started murmuring. Sonia looked out the window, confused. The coordinator rushed to the door, and then Karim walked in. He was wearing a fitted navy suit, no tie, watch gleaming under the chandelier lights, hair slightly ruffled. He looked different from everyone else, but in a way that made everyone else seem underdressed. "Sorry I'm late," he said, smiling. "Had to park the helicopter." Someone actually gasped. Then he walked directly over to me and kissed my forehead. "Did I miss your toast?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "You're right on time." The room had shifted. I didn't need to look around to feel it. The quality of the attention changed, no longer tinged with doubt, judgment, or that particular type of fake politeness I'd gotten used to at these gatherings. People were curious now, alert. Their eyes followed Karim as he politely introduced himself to the people nearest to where we stood, including my aunt, Sonia's mom, who suddenly looked like she couldn't decide how to change her facial expression quickly enough, and my mother. Her hands were fidgeting with the edge of her dupatta, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't decide whether to smile or maintain that half smirk of disbelief she wore earlier. Karim greeted her without hesitation. "Layla, Auntie, it's very nice to finally meet you," he said warmly, extending a hand. She took slightly longer than necessary before accepting the handshake. "Oh," she said. "Yes, of course." "Hello." I'd heard her use that exact tone with neighbors she didn't really like but needed to stay civil with, the ones with noisy dogs or too many garden decorations. Karim turned to my father, who stood a few feet behind her, more composed but equally caught off guard. "Samir, uncle," he nodded. "I've heard so much about you." My dad gave him a firm handshake, hiding his discomfort better than my mom, but I saw it. Just a flicker in his eyes, a tightening around the jaw. He was evaluating Karim the way he did with potential business partners or unfamiliar property developers. "I understand you work in aviation," he asked. Karim nodded. "Yes, mostly consulting now. Projects across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. But I still fly occasionally. It keeps me grounded, ironically." A few people nearby laughed, not because it was particularly funny, but because they were adjusting. Suddenly, I wasn't the delusional daughter who invented an international fiancé to save face at family events. I was the mysterious cousin who arrived alone and whose partner descended from the sky like a plot twist. Still, it wasn't about the helicopter. Okay, maybe it was partly about the helicopter. But mostly it was about presence, about showing up. And Karim had done that in a way no one in that room could ignore. As he got pulled into conversations by some of my second cousins and curious uncles who suddenly found his work fascinating, I took a moment to observe the scene. It was surreal. I'd spent years walking into rooms like these, quietly preparing myself for judgment, and now I was the storm. My cousin Omar, still smug from his speech earlier, approached me during dessert. "So," he said, "that's your guy?" I looked at him, a little tired but unwilling to let the moment pass by. "Yes," I said. "That's Karim." He gave a short laugh. I honestly didn't think he was real. "Yeah," I said. "A lot of people didn't." He paused, maybe to apologize, maybe to change the subject, but I didn't give him the chance. I walked away to check on Sonia instead. To her credit, she didn't seem at all bothered by the attention Karim's entrance had created. She'd always been like that, graceful, grounded, with just enough rebellion in her to support me quietly while never saying much to her mom. She squeezed my hand as I approached. "Best moment of the night," she whispered. "I wasn't trying to steal your spotlight," I said honestly. "You didn't," she replied. "You just reclaimed your place, and it was about time." Later in the evening, my mom pulled me aside near the staircase that led down to the valet area. She looked unsettled, but also curious. "Why didn't you tell us he was coming?" she asked. I shrugged. "Would it have changed anything?" She hesitated. I didn't realize." "What didn't you realize?" I asked, arms crossed. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I didn't realize he was this serious." And there it was. The weight of every conversation we'd never had, every moment where I tried to explain my life and was met with concern, doubt, dismissal. The way they'd made me feel like I was performing adulthood incorrectly because I didn't follow the script. But she was trying now. Awkwardly, slowly, but trying. "I'm glad you came," she added after a pause. "Me too," I said. And I meant it. Not for them, for me. Kareem found me a little while later on the rooftop garden attached to the venue. Oh, it was quieter up there, away from the lights and cameras and endless buffet lines. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. "How'd it go?" he asked. I smiled, watching the skyline glitter in the distance. "Better than I expected," I said. "Worse than it should have had to be." He didn't say anything for a moment. "Then they'll catch up." "I'm not waiting," I said. "I know," he replied, holding me closer. We stood there a while longer. The music below us had changed to something slower, softer. Conversations drifted into the night like wind. I didn't know what would happen next with my family, whether they'd try harder, whether this night would really change anything. But I knew this. For once they saw me, and more importantly, I saw myself. Kareem and I stayed on that rooftop until almost everyone had gone. The stars were faint above the city haze, but the air had cleared below us. The party dwindled into that awkward stretch of time when aunties start packing leftovers and uncles linger with whiskey glasses, not ready to leave, but not adding anything to the conversation either. We watched it all from above, like spectators of a play we no longer needed to act in. Eventually, we came down to say goodbye to Sonia and Rajan. They were on the dance floor again, slightly tipsy and glowing with the ease of people who didn't have to fight for approval. I hugged Sonia tightly. "You did great," I told her. "So did you," she replied. "You have no idea how satisfying that was for me." We both laughed. Rajan offered Kareem a fist bump, and Kareem responded with that calm, collected confidence he always carried. As we headed to the valet line, I could feel my parents' eyes on us from across the room. They didn't say much during our exit. My dad gave a polite nod. My mom gave Kareem a thin-lipped smile that almost passed for warmth. It was fine. I wasn't expecting transformation, but I also knew something had shifted. Maybe not dramatically, not overnight, but fundamentally. When we got back to the hotel, I peeled off my sari, wiped the makeup from my eyes, and collapsed on the bed with a dramatic sigh. "That bad?" Kareem asked, already half out of his suit, tie tossed onto the couch. "Not bad," I said, staring at the ceiling. "Just heavy. You ever walk into a room where everyone's pretending you're invisible and then all of a sudden they're trying to memorize your resume?" He chuckled. "Yeah, most rooms, actually." I laughed too, because that was part of why we worked. He understood things I never had to explain twice. "Do you regret it?" he asked after a pause. "What? Tonight? Coming?" I sat up slightly, resting on my elbows. No, not even for a second. Because the truth is, even with all the tension, the passive-aggressive comments, the long years of being sidelined and misunderstood, this moment, this shift was something I'd needed. Not to validate my life or my relationship, but to confront what had been hanging over me for years. Kareem lay beside me, one arm behind his head. "You didn't need me to prove anything," he said quietly. "You already did." "Maybe, but still it helped." The next few days were strange. There was no explosive fallout, no big confrontation, no sudden invitations for dinner or emotional apologies. But things started happening. Small things. My father sent me a link to a property article from Forbes saying, "Reminds me of one of the projects you mentioned." Oh, interesting read. My mother sent a message in the family group chat with a photo from the engagement party, one where Kareem and I were standing near the stage, smiling. Caption: "Look who finally made it into the family album." It was the first time she'd ever acknowledged him publicly. My aunt, Sonia's mom, the one who laughed the loudest at the imaginary fiancé joke, sent me a Facebook friend request, and liked 3 of my old travel photos from Jordan and Croatia. Even Omar texted Omar, "Hey, sorry if I've been a jerk." That was impressive. Me. Not sure if that's an apology or a TED Talk intro. Omar. Let's go with both. I didn't respond, not right away, but I saw it for what it was, an olive branch wrapped in typical younger brother sarcasm. One afternoon back in San Diego, I visited my childhood home for a quick drop-off. My mom had left a few items she wanted me to pick up. Some jewelry from an old box, a shawl that had belonged to my grandmother, a pressure cooker she insisted was too expensive to ship overseas. Kareem stayed in the car scrolling on his phone while I went in. Inside, the house looked the same, still smelled of incense and cilantro. The framed family portraits in the hallway had been updated. Newer ones included Sonia and Rajan, and one, a recent addition, showed me and Kareem at the engagement side by side smiling. I stopped. "Did you print this?" I asked when my mom came into the hallway. She looked at the photo, then at me. "Sonia emailed it," she said. "I liked it. It's a nice picture." "It is." There was a long silence. She adjusted a vase on the console table even though it didn't need adjusting. "I may have misjudged," she said finally. "He seems thoughtful." I wasn't sure how to respond. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest we'd ever gotten. "I never needed you to be impressed," I said. "I just needed you to stop assuming I was lying." She didn't argue for once. "You've always done things differently," she said. "That's hard for us to understand. But maybe different doesn't mean wrong." It was a moment, an incomplete one, but still a crack in the wall. I took the box she handed me, hugged her briefly, and left before either of us could ruin it by saying too much. When I got back to the car, Kareem glanced at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." He didn't push for more. That's another reason I love him. He knows that sometimes silence is the loudest kind of peace. We flew back to Dubai a few days later. The trip had drained me emotionally in ways I hadn't fully processed until we landed back on our own turf, with the warm, dry air hitting my face and the mix of Arabic and English blending in the background. The city was noisy, alive, and unapologetically bold, so unlike the quiet, tiptoeing version of myself I often became in my parents' world. Kareem and I didn't talk about the engagement party for a while. We didn't need to. The trip had done what it needed to do, and now we returned to the rhythm we knew. Late dinners on the balcony, weekends at the marina, flights to meetings in Riyadh or Paris. We were back to us. But something lingered. Not bitterness, not even the need for approval anymore. It was the feeling of unfinished business back in California. My parents had taken tiny steps toward acknowledging my life, but they had never truly understood what I had built or what it had cost me. For years, they mocked and doubted, confident in the superiority of their path. They didn't think I was capable of making something real, of making something mine. And I didn't want them to just come around. I wanted them to watch me succeed, loudly and undeniably, and that's where the idea came from. A few months after our return, Kareem and I were invited to speak at a prestigious business conference in Dubai. He was giving a talk on aviation logistics in emerging markets. I was being recognized for my branding consultancy, which had just reached a 7-figure milestone after signing a contract with a major luxury corporation. They wanted a speaker to discuss building personal brands across cultures and scaling without venture capital funding, and they chose me. I told them I'd do it on one condition, that I could invite guests. The event planners agreed. I sent 2 priority invitations to my parents with a handwritten note. "You once asked if I was serious about my life. I'd like to show you what serious looks like." They didn't reply for 3 days. Then I got a text from my mother. "We'll be there." When they arrived in Dubai, Kareem picked them up in our Tesla, not the helicopter, we'd done that already, and took them to our home. A modern 3-bedroom apartment overlooking the Palm with floor-to-ceiling windows and an open kitchen. My mother's eyes moved from the contemporary lighting to the Moroccan tile work. My father tried not to comment, but I could see it. The surprise, the disbelief, the readjustment. They hadn't pictured this. They thought I lived like a bohemian expat with mismatched furniture and student loan debt, not someone who hosted investor dinners on her rooftop and signed NDAs with billion-dollar clients. The next night at the conference, I stood on stage in a white tailored pantsuit, hair pulled back, every inch the woman I'd fought to become. I told my story, not about the family drama, not directly, but about rejection, resilience, and being underestimated. About having the courage to believe that my work was valid even when no one else did. I talked about making my own place when none had room for me. And my parents were in the front row. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father clapped a beat longer than the others. After the talk, people came up to congratulate me. Entrepreneurs, executives, even minor royalty. My father stood nearby, shaking hands like he was at one of his own business meetings. That night over dinner, my mother turned to Karim and said, "Thank you for standing beside her, for believing in her when we didn't." He smiled politely but didn't say, "You're welcome," because it wasn't about them anymore. The real victory wasn't making them jealous. It was making them irrelevant to my success. I didn't need their approval, but it was satisfying, so deeply satisfying, to see the doubt in their eyes replaced by admiration. To watch them realize that I hadn't just landed on my feet, I had soared. Later that week, before they flew back to California, my father pulled me aside on the balcony. "You've done well," he said. "I didn't see it before, but you've built something." I looked at him, this man who had once told me that art and design were hobbies, not careers, who'd offered to pay for me to return to grad school just 2 years ago because he was worried I'd end up alone. "I know," I said. He nodded, then added, "I'm proud of you." It took 34 years to hear that, and by the time he said it, I didn't need it. But I welcomed it all the same. That, to me, was the best kind of revenge. Not the helicopter, not the speech, not the business class tickets or the view of the sea from my kitchen. The revenge was becoming the person they never imagined I could be and then giving them a front row seat.